the Vice President of Canadian Black Book. Just a little bit on Ron. Ron was a managing partner of Infinity of Chicago. He has been formerly a senior vice president of Traver Technologies and worked a short time also at Proactive Solutions. He has won many industry awards, including General Motors Vendor of the Year. He is an exciting speaker. He is a dynamic individual with a wealth of knowledge. You're going to be glad to hear from him. Brian Murphy on our right-hand side over here. Brian holds an MBA in marketing. Very, very sharp man. He is currently the Vice President of Research and Data with Canadian Black Book. Formerly, he was the Senior Manager and of automotive consulting with J.D. Power and Associates. Also worked for earlier in his career as a consultant and a marketing manager for Subaru and Infinity. So I don't know how long you've been in the car business, Brian, but it sounds like a lifetime of car business experience. So, well, thank you. So vendor speak sessions will be happening on Friday. Give you an opportunity to get intimate with our guest speakers. Ian and I continue to work on this new element of the Autohub series. Next week, we'll have finalized a cool new feature that allows one-on-one time with our guest speakers. So stay tuned next week. Be sure to visit our website as well for the recording of these Zoom meetings. Also, the meeting minutes will be printed and posted there. White papers from our guest speakers, contact information of the guest speakers, and many other things to improve the Autohub experience. And the website name is www.autohubclub.com. So with that said, we will go to Mr. Leggero. Ron, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to take over the screen here, Rick, if you let me, and I can throw a couple visuals up.
Yeah, you got
excellent,
it.
Excellent. Let's see. There we go. So good morning, everyone. Ronald Leggero. I'm with CDK Global, handle US and Canada for their consulting arm. And I think actually the best experience that I have for this actual call is, like Rick mentioned, my retail experience in the past. So I've had a lot of different positions in a dealership and was used car director at a couple big places where I'm from, western suburbs of Chicago, a big market. Then I became, was a partner with somebody in an Infinity store, learned a lot about used. So a couple of things that I want to talk about, I hope that everybody can see the screen here, is kind of thinking about your strategy. So take a step back for a second. Only going to spend maybe 6-7 minutes here. But first you have to take a step back and get your sales flowing again before you even think about the used car strategy. And what does that mean? Yeah, of course, there's differences and things have changed, and we're all, look at us on the call, right? We're embracing this new technology and it's working. But you have to keep the sales going. You have to look at some of the workflows and things you have going. So I'm starting more at a high level of thinking about workflows before I funnel this down or drill down to just used cars, right? Because this can happen anywhere. You influence the deal, align the products and services and things you have, but in order to maximize your revenue, your profitability, you have to have a plan. But in the meantime, you also have to realize that things have changed a little, and especially in the beginning, you don't know what you're going to see. Is there going to be that pent-up demand? Probably yes. People have bought, at least in the areas and the cities I've looked at and the dealers I've talked to, have had really nice kind of increase over the last month in used cars. Whereas I think it was 38 or 42% new cars being down in May. Used cars were up 6% if you take North America and look at it as a whole. That's interesting. But you have to understand and engage the customers, know what that process is going to be. If you have an online process, make sure that everybody in the dealership understands it. The worst thing is trying to get a second chance at a first impression, right? So think about this first before we dive in and look at some of the things you can do in your used car department. And some of this you look at when I move the slide along, and you think, okay, yeah, I know this, I do this. But one big thing, and you're going to see I use this on one of the later slides, I'm really big on process versus recommended behavior. Two totally different things. I've trained myself and our sales team to ask good questions instead of selling, so that they understand who they're talking to. And a lot of times when I ask a dealer, hey, do you have a process in, let's say, the service lane? Are your advisors calling, let's say, unsold follow-up, right? Declined services. And they say yes. Okay. And then the next question usually is, okay, tell me what it looks like. Does it happen every day? Well, no, it happens when they're not busy. That's great. It's great intention, but that's not process, that's recommended behavior. So as we go into what it looks like in the new environment, I've been reading a lot, and I've heard this term, and I heard it again this last week, and I see it online, melting ice cubes, right? That's what used cars are. And that's how you have to think of them. So they're great in the beginning. And I was thinking about it even this morning before I got on the call. Like, I like to have a glass of bourbon every once in a while. I like that big cube, the big round cube. And it's great in the beginning, but if you leave it sit there for a while, it waters down your drink. And you have to think that same way with the used cars, that whole melting ice cube idea, right? So with people getting back in and getting engaged, a couple things that you have to know first, right? Used cars depreciate. We know it. 17% each year, they say, on average. So regardless if they're online or in store, have that process first, know what it looks like, make sure that your salespeople, whoever answers the phone, whoever's making the appointments, everybody knows what it is. But at the same time, start looking at the processes that get you there and start looking at the inventory. People that were stuck with a lot of inventory 2.5, 3 months ago, all of a sudden they're making larger profits than they ever have been. Because why? Because cars at the auction, right? Everybody all of a sudden goes in, you get these lease returns, et cetera. And now all of a sudden dealers that had inventory are starting to see a surplus, as if they made this grand decision, right? This smart decision. So take those things and put them in your pocket, but know that there's other things that go on at the same time. Like you see here, the second bullet point, Cox Automotive, a competitor of ours, new vehicle sales, they say, were down 28% the last week of May. Used vehicles, like I mentioned, up 6%. So I've seen that same number or report 2 times in the past 7 to 10 days. I saw, and I put this in here, and I think it's important because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You always look at what your competitors are doing, especially the industry leaders, right? You see the Carvanas and the people that are doing their thing, and they're spending all this money on advertising. And I'm thinking, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but reading a couple articles over the past 2 weeks where Carvana lost, X amount of millions of dollars and their stock went up huge. Well, how does that work? I want to learn how that works. But it's because even though maybe they weren't selling in the beginning, their inventory is in line. They also have a nice process, especially on streamlining their recon, which we'll talk about in a second. But CarMax, when you look, they brought back a ton of employees, 2/3. That tells you, right? That tells you where the spark is. And then here's the one key. In Canada and US, it's different, but when you combine them, it's really kind of similar. It's a big number in the US. I saw that in Canada, it's 30 to 40,000 off-lease vehicles a month will be coming back in. And then you have this man-made piece where you're going to have a lot of the companies that have these off leases trying to put them back into the market periodically. So you don't know how they're going to control it or alter it. So you have to be ready and know that used car prices can come down. Right now, they are going to remain high, it looks like, through midsummer. So 340,000 total a month when you take in US and Canada together. A lot of stuff on these last two. That's all I have, 2 slides. But I put this up here not to go through and read everything to you, but take a look at these and pick what you like. But you have to look at reconditioning. This is where I really learned to become a good director. And I had a dealership in Chicago that had like 7 lines, a huge huge dealership, and we had everything. And you'd go to the sale and you'd buy all these cars, and you look at recon, and you'd see how long the cars were sitting in line. You'd look at these metrics. These are things that everybody on this call knows because you're all successful. But you have to look on, even when you're taking on these cars, what are the gaps in the inventory right now could actually put you in a position to make some bad decisions going forward. So watch out for that. So you see the first part here. You know, I take in a car. I know that instead of having 35 used cars that I have on the lot, or 100 or whatever it is, I have 50% of that number, right? So I make some bad decisions maybe, just so I could get some more cars in the pipeline. Bad idea, because you have to look at it and know that some of those cars, guys, aren't even going to make it to the market, right? You run them down the lane, you have your used car recon guy look at it, and then you find out you have all this stuff. Don't be caught in a position where you'll put yourself kind of in that way to make that bad decision because you're trying to make up inventory and get people in your dealership excited, see new cars on the lot, etc. So have an exit plan. It says it's yes, it's no with trade-ins. I agree, yes, right? So you don't have an exit plan for each car. It might sound like a lot, and it might be overwhelming. An exit plan for each car, yeah. When you appraise it, what I used to do is on that actual appraisal sheet, and it's digital, it's not digital, whatever it is, I would have the used car manager, when I owned the store, put in a sentence or two on what their exit plan for that car was. That doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect right then and there while they're appraising the car. But guys, it shows what their thinking process is, and it helps you even in your managers meetings so that you guys know how you're all working together. Because the last thing you want, and I see it in a lot of stores, is that silo. The new car guy has to make a deal. They don't care what the used car manager says, or they'll bump it. If everybody's working together and they see what the thought process is from the used car manager, I think that's key. And I think some of you have seen that and know that that is absolutely beneficial to think like that. So determine in the beginning, and you see what their role is it a better fit for retail or wholesale, right? And then look, are you cutting costs? So I know sometimes I've had a couple used car managers where the lot looks better than ever, but then I see, we're averaging $85 per car on paint touch-ups and all these other things. You're not going to get that back most of the time, and it depends on the time that you want to do that. You have to look at your busy times, etc. Maybe when there's that demand, that pent-up demand, maybe you might not spend some of that money because you're going to sell those cars anyway. Doesn't mean don't make them look good. It just means take a look and see where you're spending some of that extra money. So that's unnecessary work. And then streamlining. I think you look at the recon process, you have to know and not guess how many days. Ask your used car manager, how many days does it sit in each position? How many days does it sit behind service before it gets put into a bay? Your service department, they still have to look at you guys and say, the used car department's their best customer, right? Even though it might not be retail in a lot of situations, still is the best customer. And when we talked about the 17% losing the value, $10 a day doesn't sound like a lot, but it adds up. So closing this down, like I said, process versus recommended behavior. Last slide here. I'll leave this up so that you can look. One thing I've learned at CDK is I get a really good look, guys, at the top 20% of our dealers, 9,000 plus dealers in North America. And I see what the top 20% benchmark is. So we always throw around benchmark, but with that many data points, guys, it's real. So I look at the top 20%, and they actually are able to recon and have their vehicles ready on the lot in 5 days versus 7 to 10 on the average dealer. That might not seem like a big difference. I had a really smart owner before I became an owner show me that it really is a big difference. Like even when the internet first started, popping, and even how everybody has to be intelligent with at least getting the description up on the internet within an hour, right? Even if you don't have pictures yet, or put up pictures that you take, with the iPhone before you actually get the professional ones. You have to be ready. So last 3 things there, look at the bottlenecks. When you guys get back to work today, just think high level and say, don't get paralyzed with everything you have to do post-COVID here. Still the auto business, but know that people are going to expect things a little bit different. Okay, so cater to that. But make sure that you also, when you get back, ask the employees that are involved. I learned a lot by asking great questions. Okay, and I learned to kind of zip my lip over the years and listen to what people had to say. Think about and ask. I learned at Infinity, I asked a couple of my used car porters. I asked them questions. I learned a ton about my business from talking to the used car porter. Ask your used car manager. If you have a technician that just works on your used cars, ask those people what they think, what their thoughts are in the process, how it could be improved, what tools they're using, if they're happy with them, all of these things, because you're going to find that these people are key, not just to making sure that your cars are ready, but also that you know what you don't know. So having said that, a couple things here you probably looked at as far as what even recon, we look at what a car depreciates every day, right? We said the $10, but take a look also at the recon. And if you look at the average recon and you look at this streamlining, if you can trim it down 3 or 4 days, guys, you're talking about $120 sometimes times the amount of cars, you know, that you have in your lot times months. So last thing I'll say, and I'm not sure how many people do it, but if you are wholesaling, if you are using the auction, whether you're buying or selling your cars, sometimes, and I've seen some really good dealers tell me, and I didn't do this a lot when I was on your side, but I see it a lot now talking to more dealers, that they'll use the auction houses to actually do some of the recon work if you don't have that recon service in-house. Sometimes you can actually save more money, streamline it, get it done faster to save that extra time. So if you look at it and say, it cost me $100 to do it in-house, but it cost me $120 to do it there, but I can get it on the lot 3 days quicker or 4 days, make your own decision, but just keep that in the back of your mind, keep it in your pocket. So appreciate the time. Thanks for letting me go over this. And if you have any questions, I guess, Rick, whether it's now or at the end, I'll defer back to you.
Yeah, well, I do have a question, Ron. A couple of interesting points that you brought up. First of all, you said process and then recommended behavior. Process versus recommended behavior. So what do you define, Ron, if I were to ask you, what's the difference?
Yeah, that's big. And I try to equate it all the time to the easiest metaphor or really just keeping it real simple. You can really dive into this and debate it, but it really is looking at yourself and what you do and say, okay, even think of yourself, you know, no matter what you do in the dealership. If I'm a salesperson and I know I need to talk to 3 people a day to sell 1 car or whatever it is, I also have to take a step back and think about, you know, SMART, the SMART questions, right? I have to think about not just I need to talk to 3 people. I also have to think, well, how many phone conversations do I have to get those 3 people? How many appointments do I have to set, et cetera? So it all goes back to not just looking at the high level number or the high level process, but looking at what it takes to get you there. Because a lot of us, you know, over the years, we look at finishing off the month. It used to be you stayed open bell to bell the last day. Now everybody does it the last week. Why? Because we don't hit our numbers because we throw a number up there, but we're not thinking about the irons in the fire, the things to do that. That is what process is. It's doing those things every day that you have to do so that you can hit the goals, and not just saying we need to sell 100 cars this month, but how are we going to get there? So it really is kind of the question you need to ask yourself. Are we doing this right? Yes. Okay. Ask yourself the next question. Is it happening daily or not even daily? Is it happening weekly, monthly, however you need to do it? Ask yourself the question.
Yeah. The other point I think that that you made is that every vehicle has to have an exit strategy. And when we ask ourselves, you know, I'll ask the dealers that are here, Garrett, Brandon, Golf, would you sign for a 17% loan? How about a 15% loan or 12% loan? The answer, of course, is hell no. I wouldn't sign for a 12% loan capital loan. But all of our used vehicle inventory is costing us 12, 15, 18, 17%. You say it's 17%. And there's no line on the financial statement that says this is how much it costs you to carry your used vehicle inventory and allow your used vehicle inventory to age. If it was, boy, maybe we would do it. We'd do it a whole lot different. But I think the key element that you spoke about is having an exit strategy and adopting a philosophy that not every vehicle has the same amount of shelf life. If you're a Chevrolet dealer and you take a Chevrolet on trade or you purchase from the auction, it has a shelf life, right? Because we all have aging parameters. And some of us might say, well, that's 75 days in my store, 90 days in my store, shelf life, normal shelf life. But if I'm a Chevrolet dealer or a Nissan dealer and I take a Range Rover on trade and I intend to keep that car, or a Lexus or a Cadillac, and I intend to keep that car in inventory, and that's not my core inventory, should my aging strategy be the same? Should my shelf life be the same? Something maybe that Brian would talk to us about. So I'll ask you, Jason Ediger, if you have a Lexus in your General Motors store, now Jason is a General Motors dealer, should that car have the same shelf life as a Chevrolet?
No, absolutely not. On that, when we look at that as an exit strategy, it'd probably be, first, we'd want to wholesale a Lexus in our area where we're at, but it's definitely something
let's say you didn't wholesale the car, Jason, because it's a $27,000 car, and Steve.
So if it's in our wheelhouse as far as pricing, I guess.
And you bought a car for 27.8, and you can't get 27.8, so you have to keep it. So should it have the same shelf life, and how do you look at it differently?
It definitely can't have the same shelf life. I guess I'd look at the time of the year, obviously, is going to play a factor in that in our economy, right? When we're in Saskatchewan. And a car like that, 30 days, it's got to be priced to move and be gone in 30 days.
So 30 days.
You're looking at, now we're looking at stuff in June, July, and if you look at even a car in our area, 90 days is taking into the fall where it's maybe not movable anymore already. So
yeah, so you'd say 30 days. And what's your normal shelf life on a Malibu? Is it 90 or 75 or?
Again, do you want to use Malibu or a truck? I guess a car again.
Let's use a Silverado.
On a Silverado, our shelf life in our group is 75 days.
So it's less than half, is what you're telling me.
100%. It has to be.
It has to be. It has to be different. And I think the key takeaway is, well, you better have a core and non-core strategy.
Exactly.
It's my core product. And what do I have in inventory that's non-core? And do I treat them differently from an aging standpoint? Do they have a different shelf life?
Even your core inventory, I think you really got to look at it. And how many do you got on light pieces do you have in the lot too, right? We're always saying if you got 2 of 3 of, do you need a 4th of, right? So.
Yeah, right. And if you don't, that's a good point, Jason. So what do you do if you got 2 and you don't need 3?
Well, obviously you're going to want to look at the history of how quick it's moving, how many days it's taking you to turn it, and the gross you're getting before you decide what you're doing with that piece. Is if it's 2 of the same color, is it a different color? There's everything has to be looked into that when you're going to retail that or, take it on trade and put it on your lot, what you're going to do with that piece. So.
Good conversation. Let's bring Brian Murphy into the conversation. Brian, once again, for everyone on the call, Brian is a wealth of information. He's got a good background and experience in the used vehicle marketplace. Brian, what do you got to share with us today?
Well, I was just going to talk about ice cubes since Ron started that. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, that's funny because actually we've used the analogy of they're like ice cream cones. So that works too. So hold on, let me get started here. Just a second. It's only because I have a big audience that I'm having trouble with Just a second. Can you see? Can everybody see my screen, or what can you see here?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. I think you're not getting the full-on presenter view, but yeah, what I'd like to talk about just a little bit is about what we've seen in the market in the last little while. I guess if that slide's going to draw or not. Can you only see part of the?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on. Let's just try just try this a different way here. Just a second here. Pardon me.
Oh, that's okay. We're car people.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking nothing I'd rather do on a Monday than spend my time talking to a bunch of car people. So I'm just trying to figure out why my screen is not working.
And you got to go on presenter mode. Oh, there you go. It's doing something.
Yeah, it's doing something. Oh, it's missing all my pictures. Okay, hold on a second here. I've done a whole bunch of Zoom presentations, but I haven't seen, this is like a new glitch that I haven't seen before. So pardon me. If not, I can talk without the slides. Just a second here. Oh, that's very strange. Hold on. I apologize. Just a sec.
No worries. No worries. You want me to put it on? I can.
Yeah, I sent you my slides. Are you able to put them on the screen? Can somebody else do that?
Try.
Good thing we had a plan B.
Right.
It's like getting into a car. You always had to have a plan to get out of the presentation, right? So. Oh.
Okay, well, that's not the right one.
I think I have it.
How about that?
There you go.
That's the last slide. This is good.
Well, let's go in the right direction, eh?
There we go.
Okay. Oh, getting there. Yeah, and I've just put a few thoughts together. You know, as I'm sure all of you have been busy trying to reinvent your business, we've been very busy at Canadian Black Book, just trying to keep up with what's going on in the market. And in many respects, for us, it's business as usual, but not. So we're still doing the same thing, which is adjust values every day and do our forecasts for residual values and that sort of thing. And we're relying on our different data sources, which are the auctions, the OEMs, banks, listing data. But as you can well imagine, like after kind of mid-March, certainly things started to slow down as far as sales go, both at retail and wholesale. So, when we started off this year, our expectation was this year was going to be, I hesitate to use the word ordinary, but we thought the year was going to be fairly flat, from a new and used car standpoint, that, it was maybe going to be down a little bit. And then beginning of the year, we were up 1.4% nationally. The exception was BC was down, and I'm talking about new car sales. BC was down 7.5%. So some unusual weakness in BC at the beginning of the year. But then, of course, and people on the call probably seen these numbers, and I'm sure living these numbers every day, that March was down by 48%, although the last, week and a bit of March, was really down by more than 80%. Then April off by 75, and then back up in May. So from a new car sales standpoint, our concern is right now that we think the industry is looking after quite a bit of pent up demand from the latter part of March, April, and then the early part of May. So once that kind of passes through, then we'll see kind of what the natural demand is. And it's going to be tough, because essentially how we view this from a forecasting standpoint is that we're now in a recession. It's an unusual way to get into a recession, but that's where we're at. If you can go to the next slide. I'm not sure who's doing the, thanks, I owe somebody a coffee for doing the slides. So, I mean, this slide, if any of you studied economics at all, either by choice or were forced to do so, you might recognize these. This is from the first day of microeconomics, but so much of what we deal with at Black Book, and honestly what you deal with in your showroom at the auction every day, is just where do supply and demand meet. So this crisis has manipulated both supply and demand. So initially when it struck in China, we saw parts suppliers shut down. So we were concerned about the supply of new vehicles. And I'm not sure how many of you are concerned about that right now, but I think, for the next probably 6 to 8 months, there could be times when you're not going to get things at the time that you were hoping to get them on the new side. And on the demand side, of course, we have all these consumers who have very little confidence in the economy. So they're perhaps holding back buying a car. And that's what we're going to struggle with for the rest of the year is really consumer confidence. Assuming that dealerships nationally and even on a regional basis are still allowed to operate without all kinds of restrictions. So we see these demand and supply curves are shifting all the time, and they're affecting price. And as you might expect, there's already been an impact on pricing in Canada for used vehicles. So if you can go to the next one. I'm glad I sent these to you this morning. That was good. Thank you. My PowerPoint just completely froze on me. So so that worked out well. So we publish a monthly index, and if anybody actually wants to get our newsletter, I mean, somehow people can let me know. I'd be happy to sign you up. But we have an index where we track prices every month. So the squiggly yellow line there, just you can see it looks like a ski hill, but at the end there. But that's what we've seen in terms of change in value. So we had a decline in April of 3.3%, but and kind of back to the melting ice cube idea that Ron built up there, is that this is in addition to the regular melting, this is extra melting. And usually we don't see anything like this. Like the changes month over month in value trends are usually, things will shift by 0.2, 0.3. It's never 3. So that's the biggest change we've seen since 2005. And you can see the different segments change differently as well. So, the sporty cars did the worst, and some of the luxury cars didn't do too badly. And we expect differences regionally across Canada too. Like we do look at differences regionally, but generally when you put all the vehicles, the 25,000 some odd vehicles that we track in a pile, this is what's happening to values. And if you sum up the 3%, and the 1%, we're at 7 and change percent decline in price, which is I never thought I'd be having a discussion with anybody about that decline in used car prices. And if you go to the next slide, and I'll try and get through this so we have time for discussion. I should mention too, we haven't seen listing prices go down very much. They've been actually quite stable. I don't know if that's just dealership strategy on, well, let's not lower the price, wait till the person comes in. But we haven't really seen listing data go down because we do look at about 500,000 listings in Canada every day. And we use that as a way of also calibrating prices in addition to all the wholesale data we've got. So our outlook for the industry, this has remained pretty constant since I would say the end of March. We haven't changed it that much. That we have 2 scenarios, a most likely one and a severe recession scenario. The only difference is whether the different governments in the different provinces and territories tell us to stay home and they put all kinds of restrictions on dealerships. So that's the only difference between those 2. The most likely scenario is the one that we see happening right now that we're hopeful that's the one we all stick with. But that is a 25% drop in new car sales, so about 500,000 fewer vehicles sold in Canada. We've never seen a decline like that before. We're already at 39% so far this year. So we're expecting, of course, the back part of the year to be better, but still a decline of about 25%. And we're hopeful that we don't get locked up again, either on a provincial basis or a national basis. But and we see used car sales going down as well, but likely not as much, more in the magnitude of 10 to 15%. Because we do think that there'll be some switching behavior as Canadians are trying to be financially frugal, either by choice or they're forced to be. So there'll be some switching from new to used vehicles. And if you can go to the next one. So what do we think will happen for the rest of the year from wholesale prices? So we're already down 7% so far. And where we think the bottom is a drop of about 17%. So poor Ron's ice cube has really watered his drink down. So we use ice cream too, actually. So it's yeah, they're like ice cream. But no, that was actually a really interesting point of view. So I like the idea about taking a loan out at that rate. That's kind of puts it in clear perspective. So we expect overall down by 17 prices, and this is at wholesale, and then an 18% drop for SUVs and trucks and 15% for cars. One of the reasons we see a little bit less drop for cars is we think that you know, good quality, less expensive vehicles, so you know, below say $6,000-7,000, we think they'll get traction in the marketplace in Canada, just because consumers are trying to save as much money as they can in some cases. And we think that 3 years from now, the effect of all this that's going on us right now around us will be fairly minimal on the marketplace. At least that's the hope. And if you can go to the next one. I hope I'm not going too fast. I'm trying to leave time for questions at the end. So yeah, residual value impact. So one of the other things that we do at Black Book, we're doing since the mid 80s, is forecast residual values for leasing. So there's quite a few players in the lease market that use our residuals. The green bars are the adjustments we made back for our May publish of our residuals. So we did lower residuals by quite a bit, from -4 for a 12-month residual out to a little bit less than -1 for the 48-month, no impact on the 60. And this is simply because even though we know that in the future supply will be constrained a little bit because there's 500,000 fewer cars being built and sold this year, we still feel that there'll be some effect of the recession, even felt 48 months from now. We accept that a lot of the unemployment that's happening, and you know, Statistics Canada released their labor report, survey report on Friday with, you know, not a lot of good news in it, but there was some job creation. But we just expect that, you know, 4 years from now we'll still have some hangover from the recession. And then the next slide, which I think is my last slide, yeah, which is my last one. Yeah, just something I talked originally in the very beginning about supply and demand. So we see a bit of a looming supply problem in Canada, and not that we'll be short supply of vehicles, because we've had that in the past, where everybody was always outbid at auction by bidders that were shipping to the US. There's actually a little bit less of that going on right now, which is a little bit worrisome from a price standpoint. But we just see, you know, there's, how many are up there? 6 different reasons why there's going to be more supply over the next few months. That this was going to be a record year for lease returns, and Ron touched on that. We didn't actually rehearse this at all. I've never met Ron before, but there was going to be a record year for lease returns. So that was still going to happen, and that was going to push prices down in Canada just by itself. But what's happened is so many people doing leasing have deferred leases to come back a little bit later. So now we have a bit of a traffic jam of leases, as well as repos haven't really started yet in Canada in a big way. They're going to start, unfortunately, soon, and that will push more supply to auction, as well as businesses selling assets, which includes rental car companies. So Hertz is bankrupt. We don't know how many cars they have in Canada. I'm assuming it's about 30,000 cars. So there'll be, you know, 30,000 extra rental cars coming to market. As well as right now, there are fewer cars being exported to the US just because of uncertainty over the US market. And then a lot of those bidders, they can bid online, but they can't physically come to the auction. So, I mean, in a nutshell, what we see are prices going down about 17% when they hit bottom, which will probably be in about November, and then slowly starting to go back up again. So it's kind of an obvious choice of words, but a bit of a roller coaster in terms of pricing. And it will be different, you know, depending where you are in Canada, and it's going to be different by different vehicle segments. So, you know, our team's been working at home since March the 13th, lucky Friday the 13th it was. And we've just been trying to keep up with everything, you know, watching auctions across Canada every day that they're running. So And those of you participating have seen lots of interesting things at the auction. So crazy high no sale rates at the beginning, and things sort of stabilizing now. So hope I didn't talk too fast. I was trying to leave time for questions there.
Ryan, I got a question for you. So put yourself in the shoes of a dealership or a used car manager. What's your advice over the next, say, 30, 60 days in terms of what they should be doing?
Well, I think that I guess his name's not really Kevin, it's Jason, right? He was talking about wholesaling cars that he didn't want. That if you've got things on your lot that you don't think you're going to move, I would think about wholesaling them now, because we still see prices. It's not going to. I mean, we still see another 10% drop. So, I guess if it's linear, then it would be about 2% a month. So, I wouldn't have stuff on the lot you don't think you're going to move real soon, because you're going to get less at it for wholesale, 30, 60, 90 days from now than you would today. And then I do think that there is going to be opportunities at auction to buy like a lot of good stuff at good prices. Especially, I'm not sure, probably most people on the call, if they're active bidders at the auction, have been outbid by people that they knew were shipping the car to the States. There's a little bit less of that going on now, which make it a little bit easier to source inventory. But just our expectations are slow declines, really every week, until we think prices will hit bottom in November, December, and then start to go back up again.
So you think prices will be back up by January of 2021, or what's your?
Well, I think they'll start going back up again. How long it'll take, given they've gone down by 17, we've gone down by 17 points. It'll take quite a while. It'll probably, 3 years from now, 36 months from now, we'll still be probably a few points short of getting back to where we started from. And that's assuming that, again, we don't get locked up again. But I'm not a doctor, so I don't know whether there's going to be a second wave of the virus. But we're concerned about that because it just puts a wet blanket on the economic recovery. So lots of things in play. And our forecast for residuals, like, we'll revise that if we see things getting better, but it seems to be pretty much going according to what our projections were.
What about these rental cars, Brian? Do you perceive these things are going to be good values? Would you stay away from them? What's your take on rental cars?
Yeah, I think there's going to be good value there. So Hertz has to sell once, depending on what the arrangement is with their creditors, but all the other rental car players, like Air Travel's down by over 90%. So they're doing kind of two things right now. They're slowing deliveries of vehicles that are still coming, and then we expect they'll also start to liquidate some cars. So maybe there's a good story there for a customer that, okay, well, the reason this car's, you could end up with a rental car that's only got 5,000 on it or 10,000, which is a lot better story than a rental car that's got 87,000 on it and smells like a rental car. So yeah, I think there could be some opportunities there. I guess I leave it up to the people on the call. How people react positively or negatively to rental cars. But I've actually heard of some that have no mileage on them because they were delivered and then not really repoed, but returned right away. So so I'd keep an eye on rental cars. I think that whole landscape's going to operate a little differently for the next year or so. But so many of the rental, there's about 250,000 rental cars on the road in Canada, and they're not making money for the people that own them. So they're going to want to try to get out of those slowly, because they know if they dump them all on auction, they'll get, to quote one rental car executive I know, he said, "Oh, we'll just get killed." So they're trying to remarket them slowly. But it could be a new source of opportunity if you haven't bought rental cars in the past. I think there'll be some ones that have a lot lower mileage than you might have normally seen in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Now, are those cars being made available directly from the rental car companies? Are they what percentage do you think are going through the auction?
Yeah, it depends on the rental car companies. Different ones have different strategies. So I know Enterprise in Canada has their own sales force. Actually, some of those companies are our clients as well. Yeah, I think it just depends. We know right now the auctions are backed up. That some of the auctions in Quebec and Ontario, they have a backlog that may take them towards the latter part of July to clear, simply because their staff was at home for so long. So, so there's a bit of a backup. So yeah, I don't know what percentage will go to auction, but you know, it's typically better for the rental car companies to remarket themselves directly. They usually get better prices that way. So.
Well, appreciate you taking the time today to really give us a snapshot on the Canadian market with data.
No, you're very welcome. I hope everybody's staying healthy, and you know, I should mention a lot of this is temporary. That we'll get back to a much more a reasonable state of being shortly. So,
Anyone else have any questions while we have Brian here?
Yeah, Brian, on your Black Book guide, I guess, for dealers that do use it, and you're predicting a 70% decline, is that reflective in your guide, or do you wait to look at auctions to adjust your guide?
yeah, it's different for residual values. We forecast the future, but wholesale, it's always what we're seeing right now. And usually, how it works for us is that a value, like we're tracking about 25,000 make, models, and trims. A value gets adjusted at least twice a month. And if it's a higher volume vehicle, or quite honestly, a vehicle that's a pain, it gets adjusted more than once. Yeah. So yeah, so the wholesale, and this is why, I don't know if you actually use a paper book or use an app, whatever. We always tell people, if you're on paper books, please switch to apps, because the data is just fresher since.
Yeah, our stores use the apps, but I'm just like, when you say you're forecasting a 70% decrease in wholesale value, I just wanted to see if that was reflective in your monthly app or if it's not, right? So,
yeah, the 7.3% or so that we've seen already is, but yeah, the anticipated, yeah, we don't forecast for wholesale. It's based on actual. So, yeah, they're just, you know, it's interesting because I think some people expected maybe values one day, just one day overnight, they'd go down by 20%, but we haven't seen that. Just small little bites. And there's outliers, of course, in that too, but small little bites day over day have led us. And we never thought, I mean, 7%, no, we'd never thought that would happen in such a short period of time. So,
yeah. Thanks.
Hey, Brian, you said that the recovery to the current pricing before COVID is forecasted for the next 36 months. Did I got this right? I missed that information.
yeah, that it would take at least 36 months for prices to get back to where they were. Yeah, and that's simply because of essentially we're in a recession, and it's helpful to prices because everybody on this call are selling fewer new cars right now, so you're restricting the supply in the future. But unfortunately, yeah, we think that 36 months from now, people are still feeling the effects of what's going on right now.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
So Brian, I always like to take guys like you and force your hand to be a retailer, because I know, yeah, because I know that you sit in your office from time to time and say, well, if I were a dealer, this is what I would be doing. And it's a question that Ian asked you a few minutes ago, but I'm going to push you to the next level to give us another golden nugget. So if you were a dealer who normally had a 50 car used vehicle inventory, so you normally carry 50 cars, right? All year last year and the year before, you averaged 40 units a month, you carry 50 in stock. What would you do right now to date with your inventory? Would you grow it? Would you shrink it? You know, based on what you anticipate the demand to be and the availability of used vehicles, what would you do with your inventory today?
Well, I mean, I would really focus on days to turn right now, because given prices are going down, it's always like like tomorrow you'll always be able to buy a car, you should be able to buy a car cheaper at the auction than you did last week. So I try to make sure that even more so than ever that I'm turning what I've got really quickly. And I think picking up on one comment Ron made about using the auction to do recon, if you can get your recon done quicker by the auction or buy vehicles at auction that have already been recon and don't need a lot of work, that would allow you to, you know, get that on the lot and turn it and sell it quickly and replace it. So I think right now in a market where you have basically your cost of goods is going down, you need to really, I mean, for years and years, people talked about the importance of turning your inventory, but right now I think it's even more critical. And I think to Jason's point, if you get, not to pick on poor Lexus, but if you get a Lexus that you don't want, just, you know, sell it to, maybe Ron will buy it, just sell it to somebody else. But yeah, I don't think you want any lot rocks right now because, you know, it's going to be worth, if you hang on to it for 90 days, it could be worth, you know, 6-7 points less than what it was on the day that you got it. So no lot rocks right now, please.
Yeah. So just keeping, and it's 10:05, so we'll get off the call here. But just keeping in line with Brian's recommendation that, you know, the car's depreciating almost on a daily basis. You still didn't answer my question, Brian. Would you carry 50 cars or would you carry less?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would carry change the number of cars I carry. You know, I think the strategy differs whereabouts in the country are too, and what works in your own market. You know, we do expect that there'll be some shortages of certain new cars. So, you know, you may be able to substitute like a 1 or 2 year old vehicle, but, you know, it just depends. Like I guess if you're a GM dealership and you think there's going to be shortages of trucks, I don't know, that may or may not be true. I don't know. Then, you know, picking up 1 or 2 year old trucks at auction may be a way to switch somebody. But no, I wouldn't change the number. I would just try to make sure inventory velocity was faster than ever before. Just recognizing, you know, your cost of goods are going down every day. And it's going to be like that until, you know, I think until November, beginning of December, until prices start to go back up again.
If I wanted to trust Brian's recommendation, certainly, and watch the shelf life and move my inventory faster in this environment than I would normally try to move my inventory, I would watch my margins.
Yep.
Right. That's what I would do, is I would watch my margins and ensure that there's accountability in place to protect ourselves in this environment. But with that said, positive reinforcement of this conversation is there is pent-up demand, and there will be demand out there. Most likely more demand for used vehicles than there will be for new vehicles. So positive things happening in the marketplace. Unless anyone has anything further, we'll cut it off here today. Brian and Ron, both of you, thank you so much for dedicating your time to come and speak with us. Much appreciated. Anyone else have anything else? Ian?
No, notes, and we'll have a video up soon on autohubclub.com. And stay tuned for Friday information on Friday sales sessions for interested dealers.
Very good.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Thanks, guys.